Alright, it's time to check in, see how my Call of War campaign is going. It's about midnight. Oh, nice reward, thank you. It's about midnight, it's been about 5 hours. I've got a communique here. Okay, so this means that my artillery won, that it brutalized. It was horrible. It destroyed his forces. I took Talon here. And now I'm going to split and land my troops here in Leningrad. He's got some militia here, which doesn't seem to be moving, which is good. With any luck, I'll be able to take that quickly. And now I've basically broken through his initial line of defenses. This war is over. This guy's so done, it's not even funny. Diplomacy. Germany, I will give memo after 7 days. Thanks, man. Communist Russia is basically dead. He was pretty stupid anyway. This should be memo. Oh, no, that's memo. Okay, because I took it and then... Alright. I'll be moving into... Actually, I'm going to use the coalition. I'll be moving into Ukraine and Romania after mopping up communist Russian forces in my area. Because it looks like he joined the coalition. Nice. Let's go. These coalitions are now sort of strategically strategically we have most of the map, and that should be reflected actually like in the newspaper. You should be able to see, yeah, right here, 161 to 158. We're actually beating them a little bit just because of how much space we've managed to take up. So let's see front. These are actually some really nice leftover conditions. My divisions here just completely decimated his enemy attack, which, as I predicted, was not heading south towards Grodno. It was heading straight for Vilnius. I'm assuming these places flipped back. I'm actually... Honestly, it might have been... Why would he attack Germany? I guess no, he actually attacked Germany because... He wants he wants death. He wants death's sweet embrace. I don't know. This guy's pretty stupid. I'll leave this to Communist Russia. I might even give them some of this stuff, colonists. I might even give them some of these places later on. No, I'll keep them. No real reason not to. Finland's about to start pushing back, I imagine, into these territories. I'll research interceptors. I've got a feeling for that the larger, like, strategic ground play later on will be naval. So I actually want to keep my navy sort of, like, up. Weirdly enough. Okay, I'll check my production. Tanks are about to finish. I've got... Most of my bases are clear. This one I'll finish. I'll build an air base. Did I build it? Thank you. Here I will build... Well, this is fine for now, so I'm going to build another industrial complex, which is sort of like a just-in-case deal. Now here, I want to build... I'll build an anti-tank. Anti-tank is pretty fast, so I'll throw that out nice and fast, and then sort of all this stuff will be finishing at the same time. So I'll be able to sort of put in an entirely new wave of whatever I need. I'm invading France to stop Spain. All right. Ah, the invasion of France has begun. French troops are being quickly overridden. I expect him to make it to Paris before Spain does at this rate, which would be good. But this is sort of my concern here for his front, is that England will intervene. Remember to watch out for England. They're on the same team as Spain. There's not much I can do to help him at this point in the game. Southern United States looks like they've... Ah, Southern United States actually abandoned Cuba, which is interesting. Libya looks like it's done, or else it would have finished taking Tunisia. So Libya's not playing. Egypt's not playing. Turkey's not playing. No one south of this line is playing at the moment. Italy's not playing. I don't think Finland and Sweden are playing, because otherwise they would have been making actions, and I haven't seen them do any. Russian Empire has not done a lot in terms of building factories and stuff in his country. I don't expect he'll be a threat for much longer, but that one I don't actually need to... Thank you, death to Spain. Yeah, screw Spain. Spain, England, and Southern United States are all on the same team. I am, as far as I can tell, the only person in the world who streams this on either Twitch, YouTube, or Mixer. So I'll just really briefly give the summary. So this is a real-time strategy game for World War II. So like if I want to move, say, I'll keep that here. If I want to sail, say, this destroyer or this submarine from here to London, it will take me 12 hours in real time. So I'll have to check in 12 hours. And this ship will have finally sent here. And this is a tutorial game, because I just started my account. So it'll take twice as long in a real game. It'll take a full day for me to sail this submarine that I've got here from its home in Leningrad all the way to London. That's a full day where anything can happen. Everything is real time. I love it. I actually am going to move this sub. It is, like, sort of an involved game, but I am basically the only expert in the entire world who seems to be actually, like, making content for this. But, in terms of what I'm doing, I'm gonna, every, like, 4 or 6 hours, check on my games. It'll be, like, 20-minute streams, and I'll turn it off and go to something else. So Fallen Order is sort of my focus still in World of Warcraft. Otherwise, my conquest is going very well. Communist Russia's attack has been annihilated by my superior forces and defensive strategy. I have become friends with Russia over here and Germany over here. So the next 24 hours will be very telling, but there's not much more I can do at this point. Actually, I do. I want to move this guy. Because if the Russian Empire is cleaned up like I sort of think it is, then it's kind of pointless having these troops here. So I'm going to move them. Where do I want to move them? I'm going to move all but 3. No, wait. I did that the reverse way. I want to move all but 3 into this region down here, so I can begin my invasion of the Ukraine. Because the Ukraine will be the next area that I'm going to destroy. Starting with its capital, right here, Kiev. In the meantime, yes, the war goes well. And I'm gonna have, well, nothing much I can do with these. But sail them back to Danzig. They've done their job. They ferried my convoy all the way up here. Alright, well, that's basically it for now. I would love to start a Fallen Order run, but unfortunately I can't stay up from now until 10 in the morning, because I've got to take my friend to the airport, who's going to California. It's exciting. Yes, I know. Like, it's a little crazy. It's a little crazy to me, but you know, if he wants to get coronavirus, that's up to him. Anyway, yeah. I'll just enlarge this. Yeah, so here's sort of my plan for the next week. Tomorrow's kind of in a weird plan for me for Fallen Order. I might be able to do sort of like a speed run early in the morning, but chances are that I'll need to be doing some work to get like in an IRL job for the next couple weeks because I'm not sick, so I should be working. I applied for unemployment this morning, so we'll see what happens there. But, you know, I don't know how long that'll take. I would agree, but he wouldn't. Well, I mean, you know, I mean, some parts of California are pretty rough right now. They're pretty rough, you know. Can't go around it. I think Californians would be the first to admit that. But, you know, in the best of times, California is really nice. They've just, you know, got to figure out a solution to the homeless problem there. Because, you know, it's not good. It's not good. I don't know. A lot of budget problems. But no. I visited Los Angeles like 6 years ago, I want to say. And what me and my friends did was we did like the Hollywood trip. So we went down Hollywood Boulevard. We saw the stars. We saw some of the movie theaters. Um, we actually, this was amazing. We got it. We were there because a friend of mine was competing on an episode of Screen Junkies. On Screen Junkies movie fights, he was competing as a fan, and he took me and my roommate along with him. It was one of the best trips of my life. It was so much fun. I got to meet Dan Murrell. I did not meet Andy Signore, although I'm happy about that now. At the time, no one had a clue. But I didn't know at the time. But I didn't meet him anyway. But I met Dan Murrell, who was super nice. It was awesome. Problem with California is that the state taxes for one thing and uses the money for something else. Yeah, that's an issue. I heard about their look when they came out with their plan for high-speed rail. I was all for it. I was like, let's go, high-speed rail. This is great. This is what America needs. We need more transit. And then there's like years past where they predicted they'd be, and hundreds of millions of dollars over budget, and I'm just like, you can't. This was like the chance for good high-speed rail in the U.S. And you blew it. You blew it, California. You blew it. I don't know. I guess I can actually make this like a journal entry, sort of. Since I'm just kind of talking, since I'm just kind of chatting now. I mean, I think that high-speed rail would be awesome in the United States. The problem is people sort of fear that when it's done, it's going to be run like Amtrak or by the post office, right? When I made a trip to Nashville about 1 year. I made it last summer. Last summer, yeah. And I was like, I'm an environmentally friendly person. I want to, help out the planet and stuff and things and the whole deal. So I recycle and stuff. So I looked into taking a train to Nashville. And I found out that it actually to fly to Nashville is a 2-hour flight. From Minneapolis St. Paul Airport, which is where I'd be flying out of. It's a 2-hour flight. Costs like, I think it was like $150. That sounds familiar to me. To take a train to Nashville cost about $350, and it would take 2 days. Look, I'm actually willing to spend more money on a train ticket than I would on a plane ticket, right? Because I think planes are actually bad for the environment. So like, if it was $50 more, I'd be like, okay, train ticket, yeah. 2 times more is not optional. I took the flight, and I ended up having a lot more time in Nashville just to hang out and do cool things. It's just a disaster. I don't know. I don't have a lot of faith in the government at this point to do really big, hard things. We've like, it's been a long time since the Interstate Act of 1957, I want to say. It was definitely Eisenhower. It's been a long time since then. And, like, what have we done since then in terms of large-scale programs as the government? What has the government actually done? Because I think if you want to help people out and, like, give them actual good jobs, building stuff, but the government doesn't actually want to build anything. I don't know. But I mean, yeah, that's, that's fair. The part of LA I was in 6 years ago was fine. I didn't notice anything. I didn't notice any major issues. And we basically walked from our hotel to, like, downtown, not downtown LA, but, like, the downtown of the Hollywood district. But it was that was a really fun trip. But I don't know. I probably wouldn't go to California now if I was planning a vacation. Although I wouldn't be planning a vacation right now anyway. So anyway, here's my plan. I'm going to hopefully wake up early-ish. right? I'm gonna take my friend to the airport, and then later on in the day, I'm probably going to focus on the World of Warcraft raid, which my guild is doing later on that day. We're running it at like 6 o'clock p.m. server time, which is 8 o'clock p.m. my time. And yeah, but then on Wednesday, I should be able to run a full stream of Jedi Fallen Order in the morning. And hopefully I'll be able to get all the way. If I start really early in the morning, then I can. If I start at like 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, I should be able to do it without any issues. Yeah, but for now, it is 12:24 a.m. where I am, in the heart of the coronavirus. Jeez, stock market crashed 13% today, which is cataclysmic. 13%, that's too much. People are losing their minds over this. They really are. I don't know. I mean, I went out, I got foods, I got a couple food supplies, not like just some ramen. We were able to find in a Cub Foods one 12-pack of toilet paper. Yeah, one 12-pack of toilet paper for 3 people. And like, we didn't take any more than that because, you know, we're not pieces of garbage. So, but it's sort of insane. Like, do people think water's not happening? The time thing with wow. Why hasn't human race come up with the universal time? Well, I mean, part of the thing is, like, our time is still, like, sun dependent. So think of it this way. This is the reason that time, and I guess technically we have, but here's, yeah, I don't know why I'm wearing my headphones. I'm not listening to anything. Here's the basic idea behind time zones, right? The time zones are actually built for farming. So the sun comes up in a different part of the country at different times, right? Because parts of the country are farther east or farther west than others. So if the sun is coming up at 6 o'clock in New York, right, then farmers need to go out at 6 o'clock to farm. And now the sun what happens is the sun comes up later. By the time it gets to like 7 o'clock in New York, the sun is coming up in Chicago. And the reason that, and people figured that would make things too confusing if farmers were getting up at 6 o'clock in New York and 7 o'clock in Chicago, and both of them saying, well, we just got up when the sun went up. So they decided that the day should basically start with the arrival of the sun. So that's what the time zones are for, right? Because the sun comes up later and later and later. Now, the way this gets confusing is 2 ways. First off, with daylight savings time. Because the sun doesn't come up at the same time every year. It delays for the seasons, right? So daylight savings time is built to reflect when the sun is actually coming up, so that the day starts later in the seasons where it's coming up later. And it starts earlier in the seasons where it's coming up earlier. At some point, humanity decided that time should actually function around the whole world equally. That we all should all use the same time clocks. So you can have a business and put up like 6 clocks, all which have different times on it from whatever capital city they're in. Like, if you've ever seen like an 80s business movie where they'll have clocks on the wall that says like Tokyo, Paris, London, Switzerland, stuff like that. So the problem there is they had to figure out a way, because if you think about it as the time zones go back and back farther, eventually they just go around the world, right? Because the world is round. And you can't just have time running back infinitely. So that's what the international date line is. Where that's why, for example, we're right now, it's midnight in Central Time, right? If I'm talking to a gamer in Japan, which I very well could be, they're still they're maybe waking up this morning, right? Because the sun is just coming up now in Japan. Get that? I just don't understand. Well, long time zone time is not also universal time, so it's not the only way to translate time as your time zone 2.12. Well, there is. It's actually called. It's well. Let me look up really quick how military time works, because I feel like that's actually. Okay, so military time actually is not. It doesn't really help. Okay, I get what you're saying. So you have like one time. For like what it is out in space, basically, would be the idea, right? Universal time. Okay, so I've kind of processed that, and I actually agree with you. I think that would be great. I think it'd be awesome. I think that would be a fantastic thing to do. It would definitely help out places with like the International Space Station, for example. Like, what time does the International Space Station follow? When the sun is like always up. Um, Maybe we could call it space time or something. The problem is, and this is why it's not going to happen, at least for a long time. Whatever time, it would have to, if it was anything like a 24-hour cycle, then whatever time it started at would just have to be one of the time zones. They'd have to just pick one, right? So whichever time zone they picked would be getting special treatment, right? So let's say they picked the time zone that just happens to have midnight and thus like the first hour of the new day starting in Germany. They just happen to pick this time zone randomly. Well, Germany would be like, awesome, because our clocks are already set. We don't have to change anything. The entire world will be going off. There would be an accusation that the entire world would be going off of German time, right? So if the USA put forward the idea of universal time and then said, and it will just happen to share the same characteristics as, say, Central Standard Time or Eastern Standard Time, then everyone would be upset. So that's a really good idea. I would love to implement something like that. I think that'd be awesome. The same way I think we should convert to the metric system everywhere. But there would be serious problems trying to get that through. Unless you could come up with some sort of entirely new system of time measurement. Unless you wanted to change your daily cycles. Like, I guess there's no reason for a 24-hour cycle if you're doing that sort of time. Well, it would be complicated on Earth, but if you're making it for, say, space travel, then you could make it a 20-hour cycle, which would sort of solve the problem. But the other thing you have to remember then is this would be impossible to transfer over to regular time, or to the regular time zone system. You could not compare them at all. Just the same way as you can't compare the English measurement system of feet and inches and yards and miles to the metric system, right? If you ask someone how many like meters are in a feet or in a foot, they're not going to have the faintest idea unless they're like that's specifically their job. if you ask someone how many kilometers are in a mile, chances are they're not going to have a clue, right? And they shouldn't, because that's sort of an insane conversion to use. But that would sort of be like the conversion for this. Now, I still like your system, and I think that that's best. But it would be hard to make it, like, to make everyone use it. And it would be hard to... We would probably have to get rid of... we'd probably have to get rid of the time zone system as it's used today. And it's, I mean, the time zone system isn't horrible to compare. It's just, it takes longer, right? So if you're like, okay, what time is it in London? You can, like, even if you don't have the ability to Google it, you can have a map of the latitude, longitude lines, and then just be like, and just count. You can be like, okay, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, it's 2 o'clock p.m. or whatever in England, right? Even if you didn't have any computers or a way to do that other than a globe. How did this conversation get started? I'm really curious now, because I forgot. Oh yeah, time thing. Oh yeah, because WoW operates on server time. So World of Warcraft sets the time at which its time zone at which its server uses by where the server is. So I was one of the people who started WoW Classic, was stuck in a 3-hour long queue, and then went in my time zone, and then immediately went hunting for just a time zone sort of close by that had a lower queue, and I found a server based on the West Coast, which I got into after like 45 minutes of waiting, which I felt was way better. But that does mean that everything that happens in that server is sort of naturally set 2 hours behind my time, which actually like works okay for my schedule because I'm up late anyway. But I think there might... Here's what could happen. I don't see a space-time happening anytime soon, but I do see a virtual time happening, and you could call that VT, because pretty soon there will be enough people living in virtual, like, gaming worlds online within the next 20 years, 30. I think within the next 20, 30 years, we'll have some sort of full-dive VR system. It might be full 30, and it might be, like, 40 before everyone's using it and it actually works flawlessly. But I think that that's sort of the timeline we're on. Although, you know, it might even be faster. I mean, if you think about it, we were at 8-bit animation like 40 years before now, right? In the 1980s. Or, yeah, I think we were using 8-bit in the 1980s, which was 40 years ago. So where are we in 40 years? I think full dive VR is not an unreasonable guess. And that will require some sort of time system, right? Which you can communicate instantly to people in other time zones. But that might just use the same system, just with, like, server times. No, you can't. Eventually there will just be mega servers. There will have to be some sort of implementation of some sort of universal virtual time. Especially if you want to create linked virtual communities. Right? If you want to say, go to if you did a Ready Player One sort of deal, and you went from, like, Minecraft world to Skyrim world, you would want virtual time to carry over to both places. So you would need some sort of system that could work for both. What should you use? Whatever it is should reflect the day-night cycle. Because you don't do a 24-hour day-night cycle in virtual gaming. That would be too long. Because virtual gaming is sped up. Like, in every virtual game, time is sped up. Cutting it to half is 12 hours is still too long. Six hours? No, 6 hours is too short. It should be 8 hours. Hang on, let me draw this out, actually. So, where's some paper? Dang it. I'm going to grab some paper. I'll be right back. Alright, so universal or virtual time, and this, by the way, absolutely will end up on my YouTube channel. This is just too good. I have to include it. Call it virtual time. And it should operate off of some sort of eight-hour day. It should operate off of an 8-hour time cycle. I'll need minute hands for it. With increments of 0.4. So in the gap between like hour 2 and hour 3, there would be 3, 4, 5 intervals. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Looking something like this right up here, right? And those intervals, since we're on a 60-minute basis, you times that, you revise that by 5, and you've got like 12. Yeah. So 5 increments of 12 minutes each. Right? Which already works since we already go by 60 minutes an hour. In this case, it would be basically, we would keep the length of an hour, but we would shorten the amount of hours in a day. So you've got 4 hours in a day cycle, 4 hours in night, and that's how it would rotate. And that's going to do a couple things, right? First off, it's going to make you not need to set a time zone, because any time zone you set will be immediately overridden anyway. It's going to isolate players from the real world, which is the goal. If you're building a virtual world, you want it isolated from the real world. You do not want it reflecting the real world in many ways. If people wanted to spend their lives in the real world, they would just do that. They can go. There's the door, go outside, spend it in the real world. That's not the goal. You want them completely focused in on an entirely new time system. Right, entirely new time economy. 8 hours, with 8 being the 12 o'clock, being the midnight. Day would be, okay, if 8 was the midnight, then night would start at 6 o'clock and end at 2. So 2 to 6 would be day. And 7 to 2 would be night. And here's my thinking behind the 8 hours. You want it to be transferable from a real world where people can quickly understand the system without a large amount of thought. So you need it to divide equally by the number of hours a day, right? If you divide it by half, if you say instead of 24-hour days, it's 12-hour days, that's still too long. 12 hours is, there's no system in the world that operates on 12-hour days, right? The long, like, day-night cycles have to go faster than that. If you go by a quarter, if you take it down by a quarter and go to 6 hours, you could do that, but then you couldn't do day-night cycles because a 3-hour day is too short. No play sessions of this length are going to be longer than 3 hours. And if you whatever time here's the thing, whatever time limit you set for the day-night cycle will be the timing system that some players use to just decide that their time is done. Right? Because 3 hours is too convenient, and that's actually the way I'm thinking of. You want them to spend longer in the game. So if you do it 3 hours, it's going to, people will be like, oh, it's the end of day, I should put my player to bed and go back to the real world, right? Because and it's actually going to shorten gaming times, which isn't the goal. You want to lengthen it. 4 hours, I feel, puts you in sort of that sweet spot where you're actually okay going for an additional 2. So you're actually okay going for 6 hours, or in some cases, there will be players who spend the entire day just in the cycle, right? You can go, and here's the other thing, right? Because this works within our daily work schedule. You wake up at, say, 7 o'clock. You go to work at 3:30. 8 hours. Let's say you start the game at 4 o'clock, right? You go straight from work at 3:30. You get back at 4 o'clock, which is when most people get back home. And they immediately turn this on. If the day-night cycle is 8 hours, that means that you can spend an entire day-night cycle, go to bed at midnight, and wake up again in the morning. And then you can repeat that. And that creates a very repeatable behavior, right? If you make it 6 hours, then no one knows when to start their day. Then no one knows what to do. Do they do errands and wait for 6 hours? Do they start immediately and then get out of it at 12? Right? Because you want to encourage people to be following this entire cycle until this becomes a part of their daily lives. And not to mention, like, it's a cycle that's pretty easy to understand because everyone knows how to understand time. And if it's easily divisible and they can do the math in their head, which you can do the math in your head if you had middle school math, then that would be the cycle you use. And you could transfer this to any game, right? I don't know if any games already do a day-night cycle like this. And certainly there would be games that didn't follow a day-night cycle at all, and so for whom time is basically irrelevant. Like if you did Gotham, a Batman game, you wouldn't have Gotham just brightly lit 4 hours of the day. Like, why would you want that, Gotham should be shaded darkly. It should be nighttime all the time in Gotham, And if you're going to do a Superman game, you're not going to make Metropolis like dark, you're not going to make it night in Metropolis. Name one Superman comic where it was nighttime in Metropolis. Like, it doesn't happen. Oh, by the way, drink the cool, clean, crisp, refreshing taste of Mountain Dew from PepsiCo. I'm not sponsored. I would love to be. Yeah. I don't see a universal time happening in terms of, like, space or in terms of humanity. But I could see this sort of universal time happening. This sort of universal time happening. I think Ready Player One is a lot closer than people seem to give it credit for. We've already got VR. Yeah. Oh man, I actually tried Mountain Dew Zero. I took one swig and spit it out. I couldn't. It was so bad. They took all the sugar out. Like, the reason you drink Mountain Dew is for the sugar. It's for the caffeine. What is Mountain Dew if you take those things out of it? It's just I don't know, green food coloring. I mean, let's be real. I'm sorry, I take it all back, Mountain Dew. I promise, I didn't mean that. I will be a corporate shill for millions of dollars of endorsements. Oh. But I mean, like, if you go to malls, you can already see VR arcade parlors, right? Where they have specific VR games you follow, and you have, like, backpacks you can wear on a track and stuff, and you can walk around with them. There needs to be another increase in, like, digitization, like, size, like, a decrease. There needs to be another revolutionary piece of, like, hardware to actually make VR wireless. But I think once that happens, and I think it will happen, then a situation sort of like Sword Art Online or a VR Full Dive will be very... I think it is coming. I can't tell you when. And of course, this is what anyone who's sort of a futurist would say. Like, it's coming, can't tell you when, but we know it's coming. And it always seems to come sooner than we expect. Did you know Mountain Dew was originally made to be put in moonshine? I did not know that. That sucks. That's awesome. Like, Coke Zero originally had cocaine. That's great. No. I mean, obviously, and everything that I was saying from, like, a marketing perspective. This is how you put out a product that'll get the maximum amount of people to spend the maximum amount of time with it. But honestly, like, as even a gamer who plays a lot of video games, I stay up to date on video game culture. I watch Angry Joe on a regular basis. I read The Verge. I try to stay up to date on all this stuff. I am a little concerned because there are not really any regulations about video games as they exist right now. The Congress, as we saw in the Facebook hearings, has no idea how the internet works or how technology is progressing and how fast it's progressing. So it is a little worrisome how some of this has been exploited with like loot boxes most recently, and how now I think it will be exploited further. And it's unclear how much, right? Because I don't actually think it's healthy for people to spend like 14 hours a day in a virtual environment. It can have some good results. I tend to think that this generation is going to be the best ever at information processing, at actually like assimilating information and understanding it quicker than other generations have. Because this one needs to, because it's getting so much information. But at the same time, like, if you think about how millennials handled cell phones, you know, people like texting and walking off of bridges or walking into lakes because they weren't watching where they were going, you know. So you know, who knows? It's going to be... I sort of hope that the future for Ready Player One will be like the future that they... I mean, I thought Ready Player One was a fantastic movie because it had like the two reversed sides of what VR can be, which is on one side you've got business, which is like, we're going to monetize everything, we're going to put ads everywhere, we're going to have randomized loot boxes, it's going to be crazy, and we're going to control every single aspect of the entire process, right? Versus you've got sort of like the free range artistic like creator who's like, no, let the players decide, let all the people decide, it'll be this mass market event and it'll be great. All right, if you want to see the bad examples of that in practice in video games, look at a situation, what would be a good way of describing it? Look for how bad VR could be in some of the worst apps that are being made, right? Like free-to-play apps with a million ads, or in some games, sort of like WoW Retail, I think, is among them. Maybe not as much now, but certainly in the last 2 years it has been. of trying to control or Bethesda definitely, of trying to control every single thing that a player does and not letting them do anything on their own, versus sort of a free range thing, which I think you can sort of see with like VR chat, right? I would not tell someone to play VR chat. I'd be like, well, have you ever? It's like a million anonymous people just saying whatever they want, and that's not great. Or I guess another example would be like, if you ever watch sometime the Internet Historian's video on Shia LaBeouf's "He Will Not Divide Us" art exhibit, because it's amazing. But that's also an example of what I think would happen if you gave like people free reign over everything. How do you think VR will solve the dizziness that is caused by your eyes thinking you're moving but your ears not? It's pressure. That's the difference, right? VR is you're going to have, eventually they're going to develop a complete helmet that's literally going to create like a suction system around your ears to simulate movement, right? If you fall off a cliff or you go up a mountain, it's literally going to change the pressure in your ears. But it's going to take like a fully enclosed helmet to do that. And I mean, like, I can't even, that's such a challenge, right? Because even if you're like, that's where motion sickness comes from if you're in a car and you look at too many things outside too long, or you're reading a book intently and suddenly like, some people cannot, if they're reading a book, they can't look down, they can't read, they can't play video games in the car because they know they're moving because they can see out of their peripherals how fast they're moving, but they don't feel like they're moving. And that sort of makes them like, get dizzy. And that's part of the things with your ears, that your ears aren't just there for hearing, they're there for like defining balance, right? I think VR has sort of solved some of that problem already. That's why, if you ever put on a VR headset, the earmuffs are absolutely huge, and that's so they can completely block out any external things, because they do not want you to be moving at all, right? Or they don't want you to hear anything from outside the game at all. And and the other thing is too that right now it's not as much of a problem because you actually can move with VR, and you're not supposed to move anyway, right? So right now in VR, in a lot of places with cheap VR, like a couple years ago, you just sit in your chair, and like you could turn, you could you could look through and stuff and see all the like the sea creatures if you're underwater or in space or wherever. And now if you're in a VR arcade, you can actually like have a backpack and they have a headset and helmet, and maybe they'll give you a laser gun you can point around and stuff. Although some of that's also more like AR, augmented reality, than VR. But that's the question, right? And it's something they've got to fix before they can make a full dive VR system. The absolute ultimate goal with VR is to put you in sort of like a paralytic state where you're not moving at all, where you can like put the headset on, lay down in your bed, turn the game on, and then you're just not moving, but you think you're moving, right? So the ultimate for VR is sort of like putting you in a dream-like state where you're conscious of everything happening, but none of the things that you're doing is affecting you, right? And that's actually something that the human body can do, surprisingly enough. The human brain can already do that with dreams. When you're dreaming, your brain releases what's basically a paralytic compound so that you're not actually like moving in your dream. So that if you're like walking around your dream, you don't actually get out of your bed and start walking around in real life, because that's dangerous, because that could injure you. When there's something wrong with that chemical, people sleepwalk. Right? That's the reason that happens. Because think about how dangerous it would be for everyone if everyone sleepwalked. See, this would make a pretty good TED Talk if I actually was like an expert in any of these things. In any of these things. This again is my, and I'll sort of end here, because I don't want to keep you up together like forever, and I do have to get a good night's sleep to send to drive my roommate to the apartment to the airport early morning. But the basic point, but yes, I expect all this to be happening within the next 30 years. So I think by 30 years we'll have full dive headsets, and by 40 years it'll be perfected. All right. Any final questions for me? Anything else you want to ask before I turn her off? It's been awesome chatting with you, by the way, man. I'm gonna put this up as a YouTube video. I'm gonna put it in Centrist Journal playlist. Just because I also wanted to talk a little. I've wanted to do a new video of that for a little bit now. Alright, thank you very much. I'll be back tomorrow with a World of Warcraft stream, which I sort of do. World of Warcraft I actually don't do much commentary for. I don't talk very much doing it, because it's more of like an archive. I consider myself more of like the guild historian. So whenever we do a raid, I have the video going, so I can save the video, and so that forever I know that all of the stuff about our guild is being recorded. Right? All the drama, all the nitty gritty stuff, all of like, so that in 10 years I can come back and view those and be like, that was cool. But I don't really consider it like my stream as much as the guild stream, so I'm not going to talk as much during that. But then on Wednesday I'll be doing a full Jedi Fallen Order stream. Yeah, so until then.